Let us compare the exercise of a growing or developing child, my granddaughter, how she developed through the years, how she exercised to grow up by nature, versus the grandfather exercise, that is me right here trying to gain what I lost from my glorious years as in fitness. We will start with the anatomy or the histology or the histoanatomy. Under the skin, this is the hair of the above the skin. This is the upper layer of the dermis, and this is what's called epidermis. Under it, the dermis or the subcutaneous tissue, or you can say the subcutaneous tissue is the fat under the skin. Let us work on the dermis. And the dermis, or the layer under the dermis, in the skin, we have about 6 different sensors. The one that detects the pain and the temperature, we call it the free nerve endings. It looks like a tree of that nature. It has a nerve coming from the neuron, and it have endings. If you follow the arrow, it is exactly sitting under the inner layer of the epithelium. We call that the nerve endings. It branches through the skin. It can detect the temperature and the pain. In the root of the hair, there are hair and nerve fibers. Are they the same like the nerve endings? This is a hair bulb, and that is the nerve, or the main nerve bundle. It comes from it very little small nerves, what you call it neurofibrils, that goes to the roots or the bulb of the hair. Some animals that can move their hair, they can make their hair stand, or the mustache, or the animals that use their hair to sense the smell. Their hair is like an antenna that can detect objects and can smell things. So those are the nerve fibers at the bulb of the hair. This is number 2. The Ruffini endings, it looks like a mushroom of that nature, a nerve fiber or a bundle going through it, and it branches inside to many tributaries. It is located deeper in the skin. The Ruffini endings is a sensor of pressure, touch pressure. When you put pressure, when you touch the skin but you apply very heavy pressure, the Ruffini endings can gauge how much force is applied to the skin, and it can send the sensory signal to the brain to tell the nervous system what kind of pressure is applied at different parts of the body. This is the Ruffini end. The Merkel cell, it looks like a funny nerve ending. The nerve comes from the bottom, and it has so many nerve fibers. At the end of each one of them, it looks like some sensors or detectors. You can tell from the shape of the Merkel that it differs from the Ruffini in that it can detect light pressure, not heavy pressure. So the Ruffini can detect like a hammer. If you put a lot of pressure on your feet, the bottom of the sole of your feet, or the palms of your hand, or the buttocks when you're sitting down, the Ruffini endings can detect this kind of pressure. The Merkel can detect the light touch. The Merkel is located in the same layer of the nerve endings under the epithelium, under the epidermis. Those are the Merkel. The Bassinian corpuscles, those are the most interesting one. Those are the corpuscles or the sensors of vibration. When you look at the anatomy of them, they have like oval layers over layers over layers. Any vibration, they can detect it very accurately, and those are the Bassinian corpuscles that control the gait and the motion of the person. You can differentiate between vibration or music by the Bassinian corpuscle versus light touch by the Merkel cells or corpuscles versus heavy pressure by the Ruffini endings. The Meissner corpuscles differ from the Merkel. They are also very high on the dermis under the epidermis, and they can also detect the light touch. So we have light touch in Meissner, and the Merkel differs in magnitude, and you have vibration in Bassinian corpuscles, and you have the heavy pressure or the pressure touch in the Ruffini, and you have the pain and temperature in the free nerve endings. If you look at a diagram, this is the Meissner corpuscles under the epidermis, elongated, dedicated for light touch. This is a Ruffini corpuscle, deeper inside. It takes a lot of squeezing on the skin to detect pressure touch. The Bassinian corpuscles are very deep in the skin, in the dermis, and as you see, they look like an onion, layers over layers over layers of sensors, and all of them, as you can see, they are connected to the nerves that travels under the skin. Those are, we call them the sensory corpuscles, or the detectors of sensation. Let us now go to the most important sensor, the Golgi organ. The Golgi organ is very specific. It functions as a trigger of rupture, or when you give up. So it is located exactly at the junction of the muscle. This is the muscle, and that is the bone. Between the muscle and the bone, there is a tendon that is connected the muscle to the bone. So the Golgi organ is located exactly on that tendon. When the tendon is stretched, when you apply a lot of pressure, a lot of force by the muscle, if the force is extreme and the muscle is going to break down, the Golgi organ will fire a signal indicating that the force is too extreme and the muscle have to give up, stops like a check mechanism. It terminates the electric signal to the muscle, and the muscle have to relax immediately. So you use the Golgi tendon when the force is extreme and you have to fall. Of course, if you keep exercising and jumping, you can raise the threshold of firing of the tendon, of the Golgi tendon, such that you don't fall at any light force. That is where the exercise plays in conditioning your ability not to fall and to stand high forces, gravitational forces or any other forces, by conditioning the Golgi organ to fire at higher threshold. People who don't exercise, they fall anytime, anywhere, even though they can fall from vibration. So the Golgi tendon is not really a corpuscle, a tactile corpuscle. It is a switch, what you call it, a feedback switch, located at the tendons, dedicated for the process of terminating muscular contraction when the force exceeds the maximum allowable force by that muscle for that person, for that time, for that condition of the person. When you condition yourself, you can train the Golgi tendon to endure higher forces. Let's go to the next sensor, the muscle spindle. The muscle spindle is located inside the muscle. There's the muscle fibers. Inside these fibers there is a very tiny, delicate spindle-shaped structure connected to nerves. This is the nerve that goes inside and traps around. It's like coils. When you pull something with your hand, suppose you carry a cup of coffee, how does your hand know the cup of coffee different from carrying a chair or lifting your own bed or carrying a pencil or a pen? Depending on the weight of that object that you are lifting or resisting, the muscle spindle will stretch. It is called the stretch receptor. It will stretch according to the force, and it will send a signal to the muscle, to the main neuron that controls the muscle, to tell the muscle how many fibers should be firing at the same time. This is a very delicate structure that makes the human beings differ from, for example, for the monkeys and other animals that don't know how to control the recruitment of the muscles. For example, if you look at the monkey or a gorilla, when they slap something or they do something, they have what you call it all or none recruitment. They can only use all the muscle fibers at the same time, and they use enormous force at extreme speed, or they cannot use any muscle, they cannot respond. But a human being is so sophisticated as a machine, an anatomical machine. You can gauge your muscle recruitment according to the force that you are resisting. That way you can design very sophisticated equipments because you have very sophisticated muscle spindles. Let us now go to, of course, the more you exercise, the better muscle fibers. The fragile muscle fibers will be eliminated and replaced by healthier and stronger muscle fibers. The new regeneration of new muscle fibers will have better muscle spindles, and you can be able to have better muscular function than a person who does not exercise. Let us now go to the exercise of my granddaughter.
I know you told your friend you're not okay. So
here is Farida. She is exercising. What is she doing? She is using her heavy head to condition the tendon organs of the spine, especially the lumbar spine. That way she can grow up and she will be able to stand very soon. She is now very young, but she cannot stand unless she can elevate the threshold of the organ ganglion in the lower back. Her legs are very weak. She cannot use her legs now because her head is too heavy. So she's going to do that dancing, the happily dancing, takes a break. After she takes a break, she breathes and she starts dancing with me. The more she dances, the stronger she gets. She will build new lumbar and spinal muscles. She will kick up the threshold of the organ, the tendon, the ganglion organ, and she will be able to enhance the muscle mass, and she will be able to have much better muscle spindles. Let's go to the weakest form of Farida. What she does, she's trying to stand. Here she is the first time she stands. If you look carefully, when she stands, her legs cannot carry her. Why? Because the tendon organ have very low threshold. So her head is too heavy. As soon as the tendon reaches the maximum or the maximum threshold, it will fire. It will end up the muscle. She will have to fall, or she's going to cry. She's going to cry very quick. If you look at her foot is too small for her body. Now she's crying and she's not happy because the tendon organ shutting up the muscle and she's going to fall. Now her mother will pick her up from the floor and she is very annoyed because the joy of standing in her foot is so great. She does not want her tendon ganglion to terminate the motion of it. So now that's what she can do. She will have to take some time and then she can legs can grow and become stronger. Her muscle spindles are still immature because look at her elbow, she holds things. She cannot do the fine control by the fingers. She can only do what have been developed. Her brain is so big for her body, so she is working on developing the tactile corpuscles, the tendon organs, and the muscle spindles. Let us now go to my exercise. Here I am working on bringing back the muscle spindles of my belly. My abdomen has enlarged enormously because I did not work out for about 7 years. So I have to exercise with weights, with various exercises. So I can test this belly, I can bring it back, make the testing go back with the pelvis and the stupid muscle outside. That is how I do this exercise. And that's stronger. But this guy is passing in front of me. He is working on the organ, tendon organ, the Golgi apparatus. Let us go back to see what is he doing. He is putting something on the ground in order to release the pressure of the Golgi tendon organ such that it doesn't fall. Here he goes. He's putting weight on the skate and he's pulling it with chains. Other person is doing some exercise, another exercise. That person is behind me, he is on the treadmill, working on his endurance. Now I'm doing, if you look at this part of the video, I am using one hand as an isometric exercise, stretching it on the side. That way I can kick up the threshold of the Golgi tendon, so my shoulder can stand higher pressure or vibration. I'm very good in getting the T-shape. T-shape means stretch your two arms on the sides and stand vertical. The longer you keep your arms stretched to the side, the better muscle mass you get in the torque and the easiest grow muscle tendons and increase the threshold of the Golgi.
I think that we've all had enough. Keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough.
Because I lost a lot of my fitness, all the senior muscles in the feet, all the knees, on the back, all of them get started very quick. So in order for me to retain my strength and my health, so badly. Now I'm getting this. Why would you get this? You need to increase the power of the muscle tendons, stronger muscles, and increase the power of the muscle tendons. So you don't get ruptures of muscles quickly.
I think that we've all had enough. Keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. I think that we've all had enough. Sick of dealing with the old man. They know that we're causing them wrong.
This is a very important, a very nice picture that can tell you all. Look at how it is. All these white spots in the hand, those are the fascinia muscles. That means the hand has a lot of sensory coordination. Each finger, each part of the hand can detect the pressure much better than any part of the body. That is why the hand occupies a great part of the brain surface area that is dedicated to the function of the hand. On the right side, in the frame B, this is a superficial layer of the skin. The basilian corpuscles here are hidden under the epidermis, so you have only few spots between the fingers and the hand.
You don't ever wanna give me wings.
When you keep moving right, left, up, down, one foot at a time, now lifting it in different directions, you can train your nervous system and the basilian corpuscles to control your breath so you don't fall and jump and control your mind. Let us go back now. Here I am working on few things. First, the isometric by bending down so I can stretch the ligaments of the back and increase the firing of the Golgi apparatus of my spines, and at the same time I'm doing some endurance so I can burn some fats, and at the same time I am working on the cardiopulmonary function. I can make the heart work harder so the coronary arteries can deliver more blood to the cardiac muscle, so I can avoid getting acute heart attack. Anybody can get heart attack, even athletes do. You get upset or you don't have sleep, you can die just
Yeah, I'm about to fade away. Cause every time I wake up I feel like it's Monday. Something's going wrong with all the
using
goes up in my
force,
brain. All of a sudden I don't look at anything the same way. Gotta build up all my
only
thoughts
intended
sitting in an
to
ashtray.
increase the muscle
Sorry,
mass,
I'm sorry,
increase the muscle mass,
okay.
increase
Just let
pumping
me
of the
be
blood
me, and I'll
in the
stay out
muscles,
of your way. I can
reduce
see
the
the
weight
way you
of
look at
hemorrhage.
me, I'm such a
Your
disgrace.
body
I never really
pumps
asked to
blood
be brought into this
by
place. You wanna
just
love
12
me? Well then baby
blood
have a taste.
pumps.
All the highs and the
The heart
lows,
is the
no you'll
center
never be
of
the
the
same.
primary
I don't
of
really
this
wanna hurt you,
pumping
but I can't control the pain. If you're sticking by my side,
force that
maybe we
circulates
could
the
be
blood.
okay. Okay,
The blood also
okay,
circulates
maybe
by
you
the
could be the
abdominal
change
sac
I
or the
need
abdominal
today.
muscles.
I promise that I've never
Relax or
felt this
contract
way.
your
I really
abdomen
hope that you will choose
when
to
you're
stay
speaking, when
through
you're
all
running,
the
when you're doing
pain.
anything. The muscle is the abdominal sac is a secondary heart. When you're using your skeletal muscles, like what I'm doing now, these muscles will release the tension on the heart, the force of the heart. The heart doesn't feel. And this poor guy, he's beating the hell out of himself for doing the stuff. If you ask him to do this job for $8 an hour, I say no way. Nobody wants to do manual work for manual. When you go to the gym, you can punish yourself just I am gaining back my ability to stand longer, my ability to jump, slip behind. Oh my goodness, I'm thinking my knees are sore, I'm not very balanced.